Priya ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. Abhini, how's life? How is SBL treating you?
It's going
All
on.
good?
Yes, sir.
Fair enough. निहारिका पुत्र किस तरह चल रही तैयारी? पुत्र फोड़ के आने से एग्जाम अच्छे से फोड़ के आना है अपने एग्जाम, छोड़ना नहीं है एग्जाम को. कशिश, सीमा, Rishika, everyone, guys, I would want everyone to please switch on their cameras. I request everyone, please, to switch on their cameras. All right, fair enough. Good, guys. How are you doing? How has how have you been? It's gonna be a rocking coming towards that you would be facing. Um, and of course we'll be driving that together. What is going to be important out here, as I've been saying, is that we have revised a lot of components on day yesterday. We have really gone through various bits and pieces in terms of what it really takes you to uncover the strategy and the leadership and so on and so forth. अभी हम रिवीजन करते हैं, क्विक रिकैप पे भी आएंगे उस पे. बट आज जो हम करने वाले हैं वो जो मार्च 2026 का प्री सीड मटेरियल है, इससे काफी रेलेवेंट हो सकता है. एंड आई विल कम ऑन टू दैट इन टर्म्स ऑफ व्हाई आई एम सेइंग द वे आई एम सेइंग. बट वो काफी रेलेवेंट हो सकता है बिकॉज उसमें काफी सारी ऐसी चीजें हैं जो पब्लिशिंग बिजनेस में, जो ऑफ कोर्स हमारा इस बार का प्री सीड मटेरियल है, वो उसके लिए काफी रेलेवेंट हो सकते हैं. So we'll try to uncover that. We'll try to unlayer that just to make sure that we really get a hang of it. But before I really jump in and of course move forward and start the revision for the plan for the day, any question, anyone, किसी का कोई सवाल? We will certainly have a discussion towards the end for sure, wherein we'll be discussing that. But anything that you want, how many of you have started going through the pre-scene material by any chance? Mohit, शुरू कर दिया बेटा? नहीं किया. अभिनी पुत्र कितना शुरू करता? Started? Niharika, you started? No. तो फिर पिटाई मैं वहीं आके करूं विशाखापट्टनम में, या फिर तुम यहाँ आ रही हो? कैसे? How would that gonna be happening? All right. So, if people have started, good enough. People have not started, guys, tomorrow is the day wherein we'll be unlayering each and every aspect of the pre-scene material. So stay tuned for tomorrow. इस बार का जो pre-scene material है ना, वो काफी obvious हो रहा है for me. जहां से मुझे लगता है कि वो किसी न किसी शेप एंड फॉर्मेट में हमसे क्वेश्चन पूछ सकता है. So we'll talk on that tomorrow when we'll unlayer the things that we really have in store. All right. So without wasting any time, guys, let's just do a recap in terms of what we really covered yesterday. हमने क्या किया? हमने of course शुरुआत करी कि स्ट्रेटेजिक बिजनेस लीडर एग्जाम में बेटा कौन से ऐसे टॉपिक्स हैं जो हमारे लिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. सो हमने क्या किया? हमने कुछ टॉपिक्स को चेरी पिक किया and we have brought it out here just to make sure that we certainly somewhere have the perspective around these areas. तो हमने क्या किया? हमने कुछ एरिया स्ट्रैटेजी से चुने, कुछ एरिया लीडरशिप से चुने, गवर्नेंस से चुने, कुछ हमने ऐसे मॉडल्स को देखा जो मॉडल हमारे लिए एग्जामिनेशन पर्सपेक्टिव से इंपॉर्टेंट हो सकते हैं. एंड कुछ ऐसी चीजें भी हमने करी हैं जो हमारे लिए मार्च 2026 एग्जामिनेशन से बहुत हद तक कोरिलेट करते हैं और बहुत हद तक इंपॉर्टेंट भी हो सकते हैं. जैसा कि हमने कल पढ़ा रिस्पॉन्सिबल लीडरशिप. मुझे ऐसा लगता है रिस्पॉन्सिबल लीडरशिप जो टॉपिक हमारा मार्च 2026 का है, विच इज द पब्लिशिंग बिजनेस, इसके लिए इंपॉर्टेंट हो सकता है. क्यों? क्योंकि मैं ऐसे बिजनेस में हूं जो कहीं ना कहीं पेपर यूज करता है. मैं ये नहीं कह रहा कितना यूज करता है, कम करता है, ज्यादा करता है, बट कहीं ना कहीं हमारा बिजनेस जो है ना पेपर यूज करता है. तो जहां वो पेपर यूज करता है ना, वहां वो इन्वायरमेंटल कॉन्सेप्ट हमारे दिमाग में ना उसी समय से आ जाना चाहिए. तो वो इन्वायरमेंटल कॉन्सेप्ट आ जाएगा, मेरे को इन्वायरमेंट को नुकसान पहुंच रहा है, ये मेरे दिमाग में आ जाना चाहिए। और इसी से रिलेटेड मैं इस बार क्या कर रहा हूं, मैं आज के सेशन में ना एक सस्टेनेबिलिटी का हमारा टेक्निकल आर्टिकल है, मैं उसको स्पेसिफिकली लेके आया हूं ताकि हम उस टेक्निकल आर्टिकल को भी पढ़ें, उसको भी समझें, और उसको हम फिर कोरिलेट करेंगे कि हाँ पब्लिशिंग बिजनेसेस में भी इसका इम्पैक्ट हो सकता है इन सम वे और द अदर। बट वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट गाइस, वी हैव टू स्ट्रेटेजिक एनालिसिस जो हमने पढ़ा या मार्केट सेगमेंटेशन जो हमने पढ़ा, वो तो एक जेनरिक है। मार्केट सेगमेंटेशन भी हमारे पब्लिशिंग बिजनेस के लिए इंपॉर्टेंट है, बिकॉज ये किस तरह की मैगजीन बनाते हैं, किस तरह का कंटेंट बनाते हैं, किस किस सेगमेंट में बनाते हैं। लेट्स से डिजिटल सेगमेंट हो सकता है, पेपर बेस्ड सेगमेंट हो सकता है, मेरा लेजर का एक सेगमेंट हो सकता है, मेरा फाइनेंस का एक सेगमेंट हो सकता है, एंड सो ऑन सो फोर्थ। सो डिफरेंट डिफरेंट सेगमेंट मेरे वहां भी क्रिएट हो सकते हैं। प्लस मेरे पास क्योंकि मैं एक ऐसी इंडस्ट्री में हूं जो कहीं ना कहीं इन्वायरमेंटली, इनफैक्ट जो पेपर में जो इंक इस्तेमाल होती है वो भी इन्वायरमेंट के लिए बहुत अच्छी नहीं होती है, तो वो भी एक ऐसा फैक्टर है जो मुझे इंपैक्ट कर सकता है फ्रॉम द एग्जामिनेशन पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ मार्च 2026 एग्जाम। बिकॉज इसके अंदर भी मेरे पास एक सवाल आ सकता है इन सम शेप ऑफ फॉर्मेट की, जो मेरी लीडरशिप है ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की, वो क्या वो रिस्पॉन्सिबल लीडरशिप को डिस्प्ले कर रही है या रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी डिस्प्ले कर रही है जो उसकी है टुवर्ड्स द एनवायरनमेंट। हम इसके बारे में डिटेल चर्चा करेंगे कल, बिकॉज मुझे लगता है एक इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक है जो किसी ना किसी शेप एंड फॉर्मेट में आ सकता है। मैंने ना इससे रिलेटेड कुछ सैंपल क्वेश्चन बनाने की कोशिश भी करी है जो मुझे लगता है आपको प्रैक्टिस करने चाहिए। तो जब हम कल का सेशन कर लेते हैं बेटा, तो मैं वो क्वेश्चन भी देने वाला हूं आपको, ताकि हम उसको प्रैक्टिस करें। एक सैंपल आंसर आप मुझे दो जो आपके हिसाब से आंसर होता है, आई कैन गिव यू माय पर्सपेक्टिव अराउंड कि हाँ अगर ऐसा कोई आंसर आता है बेटा या ऐसा कोई क्वेश्चन आता है तो जो आप आंसर लिख रहे हो वो कितना कोरिलेट करेगा जो एग्जामिनेशन या एग्जामिनर की एक्सपेक्टेशन है। बात समझ में आती है कशिश? आर यू विद मी ऑन दिस? यस सर। निहारिका पुत्र, मेरी गल समझ आ रही है? यस सर। ऋषिका, कैमरा तो ऑन करना पड़ेगा ही पड़ेगा, वो तो हम बंद करने किसी को देते ही नहीं। धनुश्री, यू विद मी ऑन दिस? Yes, sir. All right, let's move on, guys, and do a quick recap in terms of what we have covered yesterday in terms of the content and the coverage. We started off what? We started off with the mistakes of the other people. We started off with the September-December 2025 examiner report. We have learned कि बाबा हमें वो गलतियां नहीं करनी है जो हमारे से पहले जो बच्चे एग्जाम देके गए हैं वो कर चुके हैं। We have learned some specific items onto this, जहां हमने देखा कि हमें कोई इंफॉर्मेशन को पैड अप नहीं करना है, अननेसेसरी नहीं देना है, कॉपी पेस्ट नहीं करना है अननेसेसरली। हमने जो इंफॉर्मेशन है वो टेक्निकल पर्सपेक्टिव से तो हमें पता होनी ही चाहिए, बट हमें उसे रिलेट करना पड़ेगा जो क्वेश्चन एग्जाम में दिया हुआ है। कोई भी क्वेश्चन, कशिश, धनुश्री, कोई भी क्वेश्चन एग्जाम में आए उसको प्रिंट बिजनेस से कोरिलेट करना एग्जाम में, कि प्रिंट बिजनेसेस के क्या न्यूएंसेस होते हैं, प्रिंट बिजनेस के क्या क्या इश्यूज होते हैं, उससे कोरिलेट करना है। जैसे ही प्री सीन मटेरियल आया, मैंने जब उसे पढ़ा तो सबसे पहली थॉट मेरे मन में ये आई कि बॉस इस बार जो मेरे पास बिजनेस आया है ये बिजनेस राइट ऑफ हो जाएगा ओवर ए पीरियड ऑफ टाइम अगर मैं डिजिटाइज नहीं करूंगा। तो इसका बहुत बड़ा एस्पेक्ट एग्जाम में ऐसा हो सकता है कि ये कंपनी जो है वो शिफ्ट कर रही होगी फ्रॉम द माइंडसेट ऑफ ए पेपर बेस्ड बिजनेस टू एन ऑनलाइन बिजनेस। आज की डेट में ईटी ना, जो ईटी हम देखते हैं, उनके अपने चैनल्स हैं, उनके अपने पेजेस हैं, डिजिटल पेजेस हैं। ईटी के अखबार आज की डेट में कौन लेता है? मैं ये नहीं कह रहा हूं कि जीरो हो गया बिजनेस, बट द बिजनेस इज ऑन द डिक्लाइनिंग मोड। फ्रॉम द स्ट्रेटेजिक पोजिशनिंग पर्सपेक्टिव आई हैव टू नो दैट, आई हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट। मैं कोई भी पेपर में क्वेश्चन आंसर करूंगा तो मैं प्रिंट बिजनेस का पार्ट होके आंसर करूंगा। जब भी आप 45, 46, 47, 48 मार्क्स लेके आते हो इन सम शेप ऑफ फॉर्मेट, तो आप तीन एस्पेक्ट में गलती करते हो। एक हो सकता है आपने फॉर्मेट ठीक से ना लगाए हो, जो फॉर्मेट जरूरी है वो आज हम इन सम शेप ऑफ फॉर्मेट, हम कल उन फॉर्मेट्स को भी एक बार क्विकली रिवाइज कर लेंगे। दूसरा, आपने प्रोफेशनल स्किल हो सकता है बेटे ठीक से न लगाई हो इन रेफरेंस टू दैट पर्टिकुलर क्वेश्चन। और तीसरा, हमने जो थ्योरी पढ़ी, जो कॉन्सेप्ट पढ़े, उन कॉन्सेप्ट को हो सकता है बेटा मैंने इन दी कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ इंडस्ट्री जो मुझे दी गई है मैंने उसमें नहीं लगाया हो, ऐसा भी हो सकता है। सो इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट दैट यू आर नॉट मिसिंग ऑन दीज इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंटर्स, ताकि हमसे गलती ना हो। हमने एग्जाम में रिपोर्ट पढ़ी, उससे हमने गलतियां सीखी, सितंबर दिसंबर 2025 एग्जाम की। अब मैं तैयार हो गया, निहारिका मैडम मेरी बिल्कुल तैयार हो गई है कि मैंने ये गलतियां नहीं करनी है जो गलतियां पुराने बच्चे करते आए हैं। मैं तो समझदार हूं सर, मैं तो ये गलतियां करूंगी। आई एम रियली लविंग यू माय फ्रेंड फॉर दैट। Very important that we have that rhythm, we have that learning beta कि हमने ये गलतियां नहीं करनी है। All right, moving on, we start off with leadership and strategy as an area। हमने strategic positioning के बारे में पढ़ा। हर कंपनी की एक strategic positioning होती है, उसकी स्ट्रेंथ होती है। जैसे कि मैं बोलूं कि लेट से आज की डेट में जो हमें जो स्टडी दी गई है, मार्च 2026 की जो हमारे पास स्टडी है, उसमें वो बोलता है कि मैं 60 साल से इस बिजनेस में हूं। उसमें कुछ मेरे पॉजिटिव्स एंड नेगेटिव्स हैं, ऑफ कोर्स विल बी डिस्कसिंग इन डिटेल टुमारो। बट मुझे स्ट्रेटेजिक पोजीशनिंग के बारे में समझना होता है कि जिस भी कंपनी का मैं पार्ट हूं, उसके पास उसकी स्ट्रेंथ्स क्या हैं। फिर मैं असेसमेंट्स की बात करता हूं, डिसीजन मेकिंग की बात करता हूं। इसमें मैंने समझा है कि मेरे पास किस तरह का क्वेश्चन अगर कभी आता है तो मैं कौन सा मॉडल लगाऊंगा। जैसे कि मैंने बोला, जब मैं एक्सटर्नल एनवायरनमेंट का एनालिसिस करता हूं तो मुझे पेस्टल लगाना है। मैं जब किसी और कंट्री में, स्टेट में जाने की बात करता हूं तो निहारिका मैडम कौन सा मॉडल लगाना है मुझे लगाना है पोर्टर्स डायमंड। पिटाई होनी चाहिए बहुत जोर की। देन अगर मुझे सेम इंडस्ट्री या डिफरेंट इंडस्ट्री में जाना है, इंडस्ट्री चेंज करनी है, मुझे कोई मॉडल रेप्लिकेट करना है, तो मैं पोर्टस 5 फोर्सेस लगाता हूं, जहां मैं पोर्टस 5 फोर्सेस के एरियाज को चेक करता हूं कि वो सारे एरिया मेरे लिए कंड्यूसिव है या नहीं। बात समझ में आती है प्रिया मैम? यस सर। ऑलराइट, देन व्हाट वी डिड, we tried covering various topics out here. We understood, try to understand, what kind of cultural issues an organization may have. The C, the R, the O, the P, the S, and the S. We have really got into the detail of each and every element. जहां मैंने समझने की कोशिश करी कि मुझे एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का कल्चर समझने के लिए ये सारी चीजें लगती हैं। Then you remember, you miss the bus, you have not been able to change the culture. We have to understand कि मुझे अंडरस्टैंड करना पड़ेगा कल्चर को, मुझे अपने आप को मैन्यूवर करना पड़ेगा, सोचना पड़ेगा और इंप्लीमेंट करना पड़ेगा। ये जो एक्रोनियम्स दिए जाते हैं, ये आपको याद रखने के लिए दिए जाते हैं ताकि आप एग्जाम में किसी ना किसी शेप एंड फॉर्मेट में इन पॉइंट्स को मिस ना करो। बात समझ में आती है? बिल्कुल आती है। देन वी डिड दी pestle. We have learned nth number of times for now that pestle is super important from the perspective of assessing the environment of an organization. कल मेरे से एक सवाल एबिनी ने पूछा था कि सर मुझे ये मॉडल लिखने जरूरी हैं। अब एबिनी ने गीता पे हाथ रख के, बाइबल पे हाथ रख के कसम खाई है कि वो कोई भी मॉडल का नाम नहीं लिखेगी। वो मॉडल के बारे में बात करके आएगी एग्जाम में, वो मॉडल को इंप्लीमेंट करके आएगी एग्जाम में, कंटेंट में दे के आएगी, बट उसने कसम खाई है कि वो मॉडल का नाम नहीं लिखेंगे। खाई है ना अभिनी? बिल्कुल खाई है। That is what is important, guys. We are not gonna be writing any model out there. We only would be using the content of the model and try to, just complement that with the content of the exam, with the industry of the exam, and then we answer that. बात समझ में आती है? बिल्कुल आती है। Then what we did the Porter's Diamond. Yes, getting on to different country, different geography needs the Porter's Diamond to be implemented. Then we did Porter's 5 forces. We also did ends of metrics in terms of, which direction should we go. Remember, make versus buy. कहाँ जाना है मुझे, कौन सी डायरेक्शन लेनी है, मेरे को ends of बताता है। बीसीजी मैट्रिक्स, द कैश काउज, मैं अपना पैसा कहाँ डालूं, जहां पे मुझे सबसे ज्यादा फायदा होगा, जहां पे मुझे लगेगा कि मुझे पैसा मेरा बढ़ के मिलेगा, मैं वहां पैसा लगाऊंगा। लॉस मेकिंग बिजनेसेस पे प्रिया जी मैं पैसा नहीं लगाता हूं अनलेस एंड अनटिल मेरे पास स्ट्रेटेजिक डायरेक्शन है कोई। Then we did this, technical article on the strategic analysis in terms of how you would be analyzing any business from the strategy standpoint. We've done that. Then we also did the responsible leadership, as I've been saying, guys. The responsible leadership from the examination perspective is very important. Very important. I personally feel जिस इंडस्ट्री का आपको क्वेश्चन आया है मार्च 2026 एग्जामिनेशन perspective से, स्ट्रेटेजिक पोजिशनिंग देखते हुए कंपनी की रिस्पॉन्सिबल लीडरशिप को डेमोन्स्ट्रेट करना पड़ेगा। ये एग्जाम में किसी ना किसी शेप एंड फॉर्मेट में पक्का से लगा के आना। सस्टेनेबिलिटी का पॉइंट, रिस्पॉन्सिबल लीडरशिप का पॉइंट एग्जाम में पक्का से दे के आना है। निहारिका मैडम, मिस नहीं करना है कशिश, ये किसी ना किसी शेप एंड फॉर्मेट में आएगा। मोहित हमें नंबर दे के जाएगा अगर हमने एग्जामिनर को ये दिखाया कि सर हम तो स्ट्रेटेजिक बिजनेस लीडर हैं, वी वेरी वेल अंडरस्टैंड द इंपॉर्टेंस ऑफ द रिस्पॉन्सिबल लीडरशिप, वी वेरी वेल अंडरस्टैंड द इंटीग्रेटेड रिपोर्टिंग। आज हम पढ़ेंगे, आज के रिवीजन सेशन में हमने इंटीग्रेटेड रिपोर्टिंग पढ़ना है। we'll be talking on to the sustainable leadership, sustainability also today. All right, then we did the market segmentation in terms of how the market is being, is being segmented segmented into different I would say streams of businesses, lines of businesses, and so on and so forth. And if that happens, my friend, how do you really handle that? How do you really manage that? And so on and so forth. Then I just want to give you a heads up, my friend, in terms of what is coming your way, which is March 2026 pre-seed material that has already been circulated to you guys. We have one of the 5 largest magazine publisher company case being given out to us, which was established 60 years ago, having wide range of leisure subjects, and of course currently being available in print and digital format. Responsible leadership print and digital format से पक्का से उठ के आएगा in some shape or format. Segmental reporting, wide range of leisure subject से भी उठ के आ सकता है in some shape or format. और मुझे लगता है Mercy, one of the 5 largest magazine publishers, मुझे पर्सनली ऐसा लगा कि हम ओलिगोपॉली जैसे एनवायरनमेंट की बात कर रहे हैं, बिकॉज मोस्ट ऑफ द बिजनेस इज रिवॉल्विंग अराउंड दिस, एंड वी आर 60 years old company, which effectively means that I would have a strong strategic positioning in the market. We will unlayer this, my friend. I just wanted to give you a heads up from the perspective of the pre-seed material that we have covered yesterday and what we'll be covering today. Is that clear? Is that clear, guys? Should we go and start off the proceedings of the day? Yes, sir. All right.
To the day 2 in terms of what we really have in store from the day 2 standpoint. Remember, my friend, we are moving on to day 2 now, and we are going to touch upon various topics now from the standpoint of covering them as if, I would say, as if we have not gone through them before. So what we will be doing in this session is that we will be revising some of the aspects from the scratch, just to make sure that we really have the complete grasp of it. Now, when we do that, first thing first that I really want you to know is, and this is something I've really picked up, is it's more like some of the examiner reports have said certain things, and I really wanted to pick that up and of course bring that up over here, just to make sure that you get a complete hang of that and a perspective towards it. All right, let's start off with the learnings that we have seen from the mistakes that have been done in past in the various examinations. What I have done is, and of course the basis of this is the examiner reports, and again I'm not saying one, the various examiner reports that I have observed, that effectively leads me to these many pointers that you really need to know from the examination standpoint. And this is what I really want to talk on today, my friend, that these are the things that you should not be doing when you would appear in the exam in the coming week's time. What is really important and imperative is that whatsoever time you have, 1 week, 2 week, before you really sit for exam, you are knowing these mistakes, you are knowing that this is something that is happening with the various students. And I, being a proud Fin-Trammer, I would not be repeating this, and I would not be doing this mistake. Now, we'll start off with the first one, my friend, wherein it says, knowledge is irrelevant unless it is applied to the requirement. I think we have said this nth number of times. I will only tell you that you don't have to quote any model over there in the exam. You only have to apply that to that relevant scenario in the exam. It is very important, imperative, my friend, that you should not miss on that you are applying the relevant knowledge onto the content there in the exam. You just not say that, this is not an exam wherein he'll ask you that, explain this as a concept. He'll give you a situation and you have to apply that concept onto it. If you're not applying that, you're going to be losing marks. And for that, you always have to step into the shoe of the role that is being given to you, become a part of that industry, that company, and then see what is really happening. Apply the concept that you have in your mind, model that you have in your mind onto that scenario, and then answer that. Very important. Do not miss that. Do not miss on that. All right. Now, coming on to the next one. When you are reading the exhibit, you should always have requirements in your mind. Many times. Now, this is again something to do with the reading habits that you really need to have. Very important, guys, that we do not miss on that. That when we are reading the question, our intention should be that we should read the question in one, as in one time or in once. We are not going to be repeating the question or rereading it and wasting the time. If we would have requirements in our mind while reading the exhibits, and I'm sure you would have seen that when we have practiced the question marathon, we have categorically included, have inculcated this as a practice, because then we always have requirement in our mind and then start reading the question. When we start reading the question and have requirement in our mind, we know that this exhibit relates to point number 1. This exhibit relates to 2 requirements, requirement number 1, requirement number 2. This exhibit relates to almost requirement number 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. So effectively, if you know the requirement and then you read the exhibit and have that at the back of your mind, at least you are able to highlight that from which exhibit you need to gather the information to answer a particular requirement. Very important, guys. Do not miss on that. It is very, very, very important that you have the requirement in your mind while reading the exhibit. And of course, we have practiced that a lot in the marathon. Do not miss on that. Revise those sessions again. Revise those questions again. I'm sure that would give you an edge. But I really want to highlight this so that you're not missing on to it. All right. Then model may not be best structure for your answer. I think it is in way, in some way or the other, it is meaning the same thing, that you should not just apply the model. You should always think about that, is what is really relevant to the scenario, and then writing that without naming the model. For example, we know that we have to apply Porter's diamond, but I don't have to quote Porter's diamond. I have to see what all components are available from Porter's diamond in that question, and then start writing that, so that at least I'm able to give that perspective to the examiner that I have Porter's diamond in my mind. But when I'm writing it, I'm writing more as a strategic business leader without mentioning any model, but inculcating the boundaries of that model and applying that onto the scenario and taking all the relevant pointers, whatever is available. Some of the pointers of Porter's diamond may not be available, but that is absolutely fine. That is absolutely fine. But whatever is available, you should be able to capture it and move on. Do not really forget that. All right. Then remember the recipient. Now, this is something we have categorically spoken like a broken record in any and every concept, comprehensive, past exam, and even exam standard question, that whatsoever you may do in the exam, you have to know who you are really writing to. If you're writing to a CFO, your tone would be different. If you're writing in the press, your tone will be different. If you're writing to your junior, your tone will be different. If you're writing to the CEO, to the board, your tone will be different. Understanding your audience is gonna be the key. Understanding your audience is gonna be the key. Understanding your audience is gonna be the key. Sir, you have repeated this 3 times, sir. I can tell you, my friend, I should be repeating this 300 times. 300 times if you want to, if I can make you do good in the exam. This is very important, guys, that you should understand which role is being given to you and who you are really responding. That would really make sure that what you're writing is really making sense to the guy, because you would ensure that if I know that I'm responding to my dad, my tone will be different. If I know that I'm responding to a friend, my tone will be different. It is the same, right? If you know that you're responding to your CFO, your tone will be different. If you know that you're responding to a junior, your tone will be different. No, not that I'm saying that you'll be rude, but you'll be more candid. If you know who your recipient are, you would know what do they really know, as in what is their current status of information. So if you would not be explaining the business to your CFO, right? Because CFO already understand that. But if you're writing something, let's say, to an external party, then you may have to explain the business to. So those ways, that is what you really need to know, that Understanding your recipient is going to be the key. Once you know them, it becomes a hell lot easier for you to really frame your answer in the right way, and examiner really looks forward to that. All right. Avoid long paragraph. Now, examiner report itself specifically says this. Do not forget that, my friend. This is not an exam wherein, we should write it in one long paragraph, at least 3-4 lines. Paragraph is good enough. Write it 5 paragraphs, have good headings to it, and next, pointers that is coming up is of heading only. Write good headings to it, and that is gone away. You should not be using long paragraphs. Please, control V, control U. You should not be using long paragraphs in this exam. Head paragraphs, clearly, I think I've already said it, that you should have right headings of your paragraphs. Having a right heading really makes an examiner feel that you're really professional in terms of what you're really saying, what you're really demonstrating. And if you can really demonstrate that to the examiner, then nothing like it, because that is what examiner actually is looking forward to. All right. Say why as well as what. It is more to do with the fact that whatever information you are including, whatsoever information you're including in the answer, you should have a reason that this information is relevant from the standpoint of answering the requirement. It is more to do with the fact that you should not offload the information or have the information in the answer which is not relevant. In order to make it relevant, you should always think that what I'm including has a reason, and that is the reason it is here. And you should have that for sure when you're writing it, to ensure that you're not going haywire. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Now, what's different is what's important. This again, I would say, we have really spoken it, many times. In fact, we spoke on this yesterday also, that I always say that, you have to step into the shoe of the person or the role that is being given to you, or the industry that is being provided to you in the question. For example, if you're writing or dealing with a scenario wherein you're dealing with the construction industry, now you know that you need to see as to what really happens in the construction industry. If you're part of the car manufacturing industry, you step into the shoe of car manufacturer and see through as to what really happens over there. Every industry has a different issue, different concern, or different ways of dealing the things. Once you'll step into their shoes, then that would be more relevant for you to get to the right answer. And that's where what is different is important. Let's say you're answering a construction industry, and on the other side you're answering a gymnasium industry. Now the concerns of both the industry will be different, nuances are different, economies is different, customers are different, and so on and so forth. So when you step in over there, what is different, and your answer would automatically be in that direction. So what is different is really important. Step into that shoe, step into that industry, get in over there, have that in your blood, and then start answering, because that would really make you feel differentiated over there. Is that clear? Yes, sir. All right. Now, FM for figures, it is more like, you should be a financial manager for the figures. I think it goes without saying. What it exactly means is that you should certainly demonstrate your understanding over the financial numbers. Of course, you need to know the non-financial aspect too, but from the financial aspect, they really expect you that you are the real financial manager. You are able to do the cost benefit analysis. You understand NPV, you understand IRR, you know what really goes on to the profit side of it. You know what the cost is, you know what the revenue is, and so on and so forth. You should know and demonstrate your financial management expertise over there in the exam, come what may. Skill not being rewarded can be valuable, which is more like, any general professional skill that is being mentioned, all the general professional skills that you really need to demonstrate is gonna be important. At times, he may ask you one of the professional skills, but that may warrant that you have to do more analysis. For example, you probably have to apply or give a commercial acumen in a question, or apply a commercial acumen as a professional skill in a question. But for that, you may have to do detailed analysis. So effectively, you're applying 2 professional skills onto one question. But expectation is that you would only be showcasing the commercial acumen. So at times, what would happen is that, the complete detailed analysis, the more you would get into it is going to be relevant for you to get to the right answer, and so on and so forth. So skill that is not being rewarded also can also be important, and that is what you should certainly be having at the back of your mind when you're really sitting for exam. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Now these 10 pointers, my friend, what I have really gathered, all these 10 pointers are somewhat taken up from the ACCA examiner report. And I can tell you, after reading various examiner reports, that most of these pointers are very much relevant for any and every exam. And for you to really do well in the exam, you should not be missing on these points, come what may. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Now coming on to the topics that we really wanted to cover, more from the standpoint of what I really want to cover as an areas in the syllabus. We are going to cover today the organizational management, reporting, internal control, and risk related areas. We'll also be covering technology, project, and disruption related areas today, just to make sure that we completely have a grasp of it in terms of what really happens in these syllabus areas. Again, we have taken the broad pointers, my friend, not without that we this session can really replicate the entire full course. Do not forget that this is more like a refresher for you to really revise the concept with me, and of course have a complete hang off as to how you can hit exam in the best possible way. All right, moving on to the organizational management, reporting, internal control, and risk related areas. What I've done is I have reviewed various exams, and of course these are like some of the examples over here. It is more like an illustrative list. It is not an exhaustive one that really tells you that risk as an area is there in the exam. In every exam you would find one question on the risk wherein he would give you something in relation to risk that you really need to assess, you really need to suggest, you really need to mitigate, you really need to identify, and so on and so forth. So risk is something that is always there in the exam. And then comes the internal control. You would see many questions in the exam that really talks on what the internal control of an organization is, how it should be, kind of weaknesses that they have, kind of strengthening that you need to do, and so on and so forth. So that is again something that is very much versatile in the exam. And then comes the management and reporting. Of late, I can tell you, of late they have stopped, or they have reduced I would say reduce is the right word. They have reduced taking this topic on the exam plateau. They have not been asking integrated reporting in last 2, 3, 4 attempts, but this is one of the area that can be heavily tested, my friend. Do not miss on that. I'll not be surprised if you get a question on integrated reporting in the very next exam. Remember, my friend, some of the current technical articles that deals with sustainability, that deals with responsible leadership, really circles down to the fact that management have to start doing integrated reporting, and hence I'll not be surprised if you would get something on integrated reporting in the upcoming exam too. So do not undermine the importance of this. All right, moving on. What we'll do today, my friend, we'll start off with the risk in terms of what you really need to know from the risk side of it, as to what you really need to know from the risk identification, risk management, risk control, risk aspect at large. We will touch upon that, and of course we'll get into the details. Now, if I really start off with risk per se in terms of what the risk is all about, we really know that we are going to take care of risk versus return ratio in any and everything that we do. We also have to always think about identification of the risk at the appropriate time. We'll also have to think through that what kind of risk we are always exposed to, whether it is strategic risk or operational risk per se, and then what kind of risk management aspect that we really need to have. And of course, COSO framework is something that is any which way is very heavily tested, because you may get to see something in the exam that warrants you to think about what you should be doing from the COSO framework standpoint. All right, if I really talk on the risk and return ratio, this graph really says it all in terms of what you should be doing. We know that if risk is low in any kind of project, any kind of process, and the reward is also low, then what we do is that we keep doing what we're doing. We do not really bother in terms of doing anything more onto that front. However, if the risk is very high and return is low, we avoid that kind of a project. We avoid that kind of a process. That goes without saying, sir. It's a basic risk reward theory, sir. We understand that goes without saying. Then, if there's a case wherein risk is very low but return is very high, I would just love to go there. That is the ideal situation to be in. I would love to be part of that, and that is what it is gonna be. And then when the risk is high and of course return is also high, think about you getting into a particular geography wherein X amount of people are there and they do not have X, a Y product, and you're there to launch a Y product. The demand is going to be very high. The risk is going to be very high because it's a new company, new country, and so on and so forth. You are going to do that, but that is going to be your strategic decision. You have to examine that very carefully. You may do the Porter's diamond, you may do the pestle analysis, you may do your own self-strategic positioning, and so on and so forth. before making that kind of a decision. Isn't that very basic? Yes, sir. Isn't that what we always do? Yes, sir. All right, moving on. Let's identify the risk now. We know that for the purpose of identification of risk, what we really need to do is we have to think about the strategic risk and the operational risk. And the next slide really talks on as to what the strategic risks are and what the operational risks are. We'll get on to that in a while. But what is really important is that we are really thinking of now from the identification standpoint. And the first step is that what should we do? Strategic or operational? We'll get on to that in a while. And then how one would do it. You have to do the strength and weakness analysis of yourself, the SWOT analysis of yourself. We have to do the pestle analysis, and of course your internal and external environment is going to be of real important, because you would be doing your internal assessment also from the strategic positioning standpoint. Once you have done that, then it is really imperative that you should really have that at the back of your mind, that who is responsible for the risk management in the organization, and that is nothing but the directors and the senior leadership. We'll come upon in a while when we'll talk on the internal control as to who is responsible for internal control. But you should really know that from the risk standpoint, directors are really responsible for it. If you get to see a situation in the exam wherein directors are not doing what they're supposed to do, you should be able to highlight that. Now, when you are going to identify risk, what all you really need to do, I have noted down few of the things over here, and you should take that at the back of your mind to make sure that you're not missing on these small things in the exam, to showcase your knowledge that you completely understand the risk identification as a process. Now, what all those things are? You may have to do inspection, inquiries, checklist, brainstorming, external event, internal event testing, trends, root cause analysis, escalations that have been happening in the organization, benchmarking, what has happened, checklist, leading event indicators, any kind of indicators that you may get to see that is leading to a situation wherein you know that organization is exposed to risk, and so on and so forth. All of those things are the common modes of assessing and identifying the risk. Never forget that, my friend. Very important that we're not missing on these small things. Coming on to the strategic versus operational risk. Now, we know there are two kinds of risks that really exist in the organization. That can be operational one, which is more to do with the internal processes, and then strategic risk, which is more to do with your overall strategic positioning in a firm. If I really have to give an example of both, and I can tell you, you may get to expose onto both the sides in the exam, wherein he may throw a question onto yourself in relation to operational risk, or he may throw something onto yourself in relation to the strategic risk. If the strategic risk is that you may have an outdated technology with which you're working at, and of course the last exam that we have seen, they had a question wherein the technology that was being used was outdated, and of course you had to understand the risk in relation to it, both from the business standpoint and also from the organizational standpoint. The declining, the try to somewhat try to always think that all of these concerns or all of this risk from the strategic standpoint can lead to reputational concerns, can lead to financial risk, which ultimately end up in a situation wherein you may have to close out the business. Hence, strategic risk is very important because they affect the whole organization. It is being really, I would say, very important. It'll be very important for the senior management to really have a close watch on the strategic risks and ensure that you're not missing on to that, and they should always ensure that they're not affecting the business come what may. On the operational risk standpoint, if I really differentiate that, it is more of the internal processes, the small things that you really do, and it really impact that particular process or segment. And what is really important is that your internal management is having a control check on that, which is more to do with the fact that they're able to control the routine errors, the routine of frauds, or any kind of non-compliances that is happening in the organization, so as to ensure that they're not missing out onto it. Very important, my friend, to really know that, because many of the past exam questions have a question on the risk wherein you have to identify what kind of risks are there, and for that you probably have to think through what is the strategic risk, what is the operational risk. You may also have to identify, and I can tell you there was one exam, and I keep citing out that exam, with various and talk on to that exam with various students, wherein in the examination itself he has given you the risks, and he has pointed out that this is high risk, this is medium risk, this is low risk, and so on and so forth. And then he wants you to write the mitigating factors onto that. Now, examiner is very smart. He's effectively assessing you that when he has written something like high or something like medium, or something like low, are you able to understand that, if the risk would be high, you have to think about the right mitigating factors or more mitigating factors. When the risk is low, then you may not have to spend that much amount of time over there. One or two mitigating factors would be good enough there. That is how examiner at times tests you, because he gives you the degree also, or he may gives you that this is strategic risk, this is operational risk, and then you have to write what is right over there in relation to that particular risk. Whether it is strategic, whether it is operational, you have to write it over there. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Coming on to the COSO framework. Now, this is more to understand, my friend. I'm really I don't want you to, just cram it up, but COSO framework is important for having a good enterprise risk management system. This can be a good tool for you to suggest if you get to see some kind of a gap in the risk management of the organization. You should know that COSO framework really deals with strategic, operations, reporting, and compliance on the one side of it. So effectively covers anything and everything that is related or that can go wrong. And on the other side, it covers all the subsidiaries, business units, divisions, so just to make sure that it has the holistic coverage. And what really happens in the enterprise risk management framework is that you start off with the objective setting, that you have the right objective as to what you should be doing from the risk standpoint in terms of what is to be controlled, what is not to be controlled. And then when you do that, you come on to the event identification, wherein you identify as to what event has led to the risk that we are getting exposed to, or what events can lead to the risks, and so on and so forth. So you would identify that, you would understand and do the risk assessment as to what all things can go wrong, and then you would understand that this is what I really need to have a response for. So you would, of course, considering the risk that you have assessed, that this is high, medium, or low, you would devise that what would be your response in that particular scenario. That is nothing but there is a response. Once you have done that, then you will come on to the control activities in terms of strengthening what kind of internal controls that you would need to have to ensure that those risks are being taken care. And then comes the information and communication in terms of having a regular communication in terms of what is really happening in the organization and what should be happening in the organization. And of course, that dissemination of knowledge has to happen across the organization so that anybody and everybody is aware of in terms of what can go wrong and what they should be doing in the scenario like this. And last but not the least is the continuous monitoring that has to happen in the organization at all the levels to ensure that there is nothing that is being missed out, and anything and everything that is getting missed out is getting reported accurately to the audit committee, to the leadership, to the risk management team, and so on and so forth, so that nothing is being missed out. That's what the COSO framework is all about. That's what enterprise risk management is all about. You may have to give this back to the examiner if you get to see something like this coming your way, wherein you have to suggest the right ERM components. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Now, I do have one more slide on the risk, my friend, that effectively talks on how to answer the risk question. Remember, I told you just at the start of this revision session itself, as in we started off this yesterday, and we started off with this premise that we would be understanding what kind of questions can come on these areas. Again, these are just the illustrative examples, not the exhaustive ones. He may throw something differently also at yourself. But if you get to see a risk question, what should be your methodology or your way of answering it? You should certainly think about identifying the risk, whether it is strategic, operational. You have to think about that. Once you have done that, think about the risk management, piece as to what all risk that you would want to manage and control, not anything and everything that you would want to control. You would understand this is low, medium, high, and then you would decide what kind of risk action you would really need to have. Ensure that there is a right risk reporting and monitoring system available. If not, always suggest that. I've seen this in many of the exams, that risk reporting and monitoring system had a gap. If there is one, recommend that always. And then few areas that I really want you to look forward to, and this is more me coming from having a CFO hat. I can tell you that many of the times he wants you to assess and identify the risk, and that is where what you really need to do is that you really have to have an FC biker mnemonic with you. Now, FC biker is nothing but a financial controller, which I used to be at one point in time, and I have always been a biker. So financial controller who is a biker over here can really take you out from the sea of risk, And that is what you really need to know, wherein F stands for fraud risk. It's something that you should look forward to. C stands for competition risk. You should always look forward to. B stands for business continuity risk. I stands for information security risk. K stands for key person risk. E stands for environmental risk. R stands for reputational risk, and R stands for reporting risk. Not all of these risks would be there in the exam, my friend. But if you know the FC biker, no, at least your mind will tell you that I have to look forward for these risks. And these are enough risks that even if you'll take like 4 or 5 out of this, and I've cited out that, there in the exam, in terms of that these are the risks that are relevant for the particular scenario. This is what it is, and this is what the mitigating factor is. You're out, my friend. You would get what is needed from the purpose of really doing well in the exam. Very important that we do not miss out on the FC biker concept. Very, very, very important. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Coming on, my friend, to the internal control and audit. Now, this is again something to look forward to, because once you have done the risk, then comes the internal control and audit piece of it, that what you should be doing from the control aspect. Now, if I really talk on the internal control and audit, you really have to know what is the objective of the organization, what all roles and responsibilities have been, and of course, what all are the components of the internal control. If you really talk on the internal control, all of the things that I just mentioned are going to be really, really important things. You should know the objectives, and you should know the risk and, somewhat roles and responsibilities. You should know, the somewhat somewhere, what kind of components are there in the internal control. We'll check upon that in a while. And of course, we should know who all are the responsible parties. Now, this really shows a lot, my friend, in terms of, who all will be responsible. And you should really have this at the back of your mind, because many of the times, I can tell you, many of the times, the examiner really plays around with us on this thing. He would give you a scenario in the exam wherein there is an internal control which may or may not be working fine. And then he'll be asking that who would be responsible for what. And that is where you really need to be sure that board is responsible for maintaining a sound internal control. Board is responsible for maintaining a sound internal control. Board is responsible for maintaining a sound internal control. So 3 times you've said, because I am telling you, my friend, this is something that is very heavily tested. Board is responsible for maintaining a sound internal control. Do not forget that. It is the board's responsibility. Get that, sir? Then directors should implement a sound system of internal control, which should be reviewed and on a regular basis. Board is responsible, directors implement. Board is responsible, directors implement. Do not forget that. He tries to praise you around in the exam. We are Fintramer, sir. We are not gonna be letting you do this. All right. Moving on, the kind of control components that you have, the components of the internal control. You have the control environment, my friend. And again, this is more to do with the fact that, what kind of activities are being done in an organization. Control environment is more like a tone from the top. What kind of ethics and the values that organization really has is really imperative and important for you to really know. And most of the control environment things would be there in the introduction itself. In fact, the pre-scene material would also have a lot, my friend, that really tells you in terms of, what kind of control environment an organization has. Maybe, may not be, if it is not there in the pre-scene material, then the background information that you would see in the exam certainly will cite out that, what is the philosophy of the management at large. Then comes the risk assessment in terms of, what kind of risks, an organization has identified, and what is the somewhere, how they have been considered, what kind of things they have really been doing from the fraud standpoint, error standpoint, what kind of control activities they have, again, is part of internal control components, in terms of having a maker and a checker, or having the right controls being in place from the authorization standpoint, from the responsibility standpoint is going to be the key. What kind of information communication channel they have, how strengthened they are from the perspective of sharing the information right from the scratch to the top. Again, what kind of monitoring activities, what kind of monitoring they have on the ongoing basis, so that, things are not going wrong. Components of internal controls are very important if you're really suggesting something to happen at the client end or at the company's end to ensure that they have a good internal control. You should know this by heart, my friend, because this may come your way wherein you have to suggest something from the controlling standpoint. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Coming on to, my friend, the kind of questions that I've seen coming on the internal control. If you get to see an internal control in the issue in an exam, always think of what is the exact weakness in the internal control. Now, when you do that, you should always think of the industry you're part of. And many times, a change of industry can really change the risk that you may have, or the change of internal controls that you really need to have. For example, if I'm thinking about an airline industry, the risks will be different and controls would be different. If I'm thinking of an FMCG store, then the risk would be different, controls would be different. If I'm thinking of, let's say, a cloud computing company, the risk would be different, the controls would be different. If I'm talking about, let's say, a fitness gym, the risk would be different and controls would be different. So what you're thinking of, while the internal control components and everything remains to be the same, but whenever you're thinking about the risk, always think of in relation to that particular case that is being given to you, because that would help you take the right course of action. And that would help you knowing the exact weakness, because weakness in one may not be a weakness in the other. For example, just take an example, the store having that theft systems wherein you cannot take anything out, and if you take anything out, there would be an alarm that will be raised. That can be good internal control, but that cannot be a good internal control for an airline industry, because in airline industry there is nothing to be picked up, at least from the plane standpoint. So the control itself would change, because that is where the risk would be different, the control would be different, and so on and so forth. So whenever you're thinking about the control, thinking about the risk, think in relation to that particular company, that particular industry, and then think of what can go wrong, and mention that things, if it is being asked that you should be mentioning that kind of weaknesses that you observed in internal control, think of what can go wrong and start mentioning that in small paras. Think about repercussions and consequences, in terms of how large it can be, and think about that and then answer that. Think about who would that impact to, so there will be an impact on client, there will be an impact on government, there will be an impact of shareholders, there will be an impact of people at large, and so on and so forth. Think about the impact, because impact will tell you that how big the problem is, how big that control lapse is, and then you would suggest appropriately that considering this it is that big, this is what I should be doing in that kind of a scenario. And then considering that, provide your recommendation considering all of these areas, and then close out the answer. And when you're doing that, do not forget that you need to be respectful, my friend, in anything and everything that you write. You have to be professional in your approach. You cannot be unprofessional, come what may. Many of the times, I can tell you, many of the times what I've seen is that in the exams, you would see a question wherein directors or board of directors or board or CEO, they're doing everything wrong for whatsoever reason. They're doing something which is wrong, which is not acceptable, and they ask you to really comment on that. When you comment on that, you comment in a way that this is all bullshit, this is all crap, this is not something that should be doing. This is not something that should be doing, because it is very important that we are real professional over there. You cannot be curt, you cannot be that much upfront, you cannot be that rude. You have to tell anything and everything very professionally, not missing out on the general professionalism skill. Do not forget that. You can always be critical without criticizing. You should say things in a polite manner in the best way possible. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Moving on to the third very important component of what we really wanted to do today, which is organizational management and reporting. Remember, my friend, he would certainly give you something, he may give you something on the organizational management issue, wherein the director's composition, the committee's composition may not be right, and that is where you really need to know the non-executive directors, the importance of them, the Mendelow's framework in terms of understanding your stakeholders, the integrated reporting, and the 6 types of capital that are really part of that integrated reporting. The more you would understand that, the better it is for you. Coming on, guys, we'll start off with the non-executive directors. Do not forget, they are the independent directors. Do not forget that. I keep saying that like a broken record. Independent directors are going to be must for any and every organization. Do not really forget on that. It is very imperative and very important. All right. If I really circle down, my friend, in terms of what we really have in store today from the independent director standpoint, we should know that there is a need to have a balanced board wherein the executive and non-executive directors are of significant size, and we should not forget that a role of a non-executive director is to have a strong play on the strategy, performance, risk, and the people side of it, so that the overall organization is taken care. If I really have to tell you the some of the important pointers for the non-executive directors, do not forget that non-executive directors should not be an employee within the last 5 years. Do not really forget that. Non-executive directors should not have been a shareholder or an auditor or a supplier or a significant customer. Do not forget that. They should not have a family member in a senior position at the company. Do not miss on to it. Any NED who has been on the board for more than 9 years assumed to be no longer independent. That is again something that should be having at the back of your mind. NED is only remunerated with a fee for the director's duty. No profit share or no share options is being given to him. They cannot have the cross directorship, wherein an executive director of one company operate as a non-executive directors in the other company, and vice versa. Identical reciprocal arrangement is also happening. It is not possible. You cannot do that. Hence, directors are non-executives in each other companies. That is what you really need to have to ensure that you're not missing out on these small elements that may get to be seen in the exam. Do not forget on that. What is really important is that you should know that this is what NED can do and this is what NED cannot do, so that you're not missing on the basics of it. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Coming on to the stakeholder side of it, many times when it comes to the committees, comes to the directors, one of the important element that really circles down or really boils down is that they really want you to understand that who your stakeholders are, or do you know that your stakeholders are these many, and if there are these many, what kind of approach that you should be having towards managing them. Remember when we have done Menlo framework in the class, we have done that with the help of various examples citing out what you should do in a particular scenario. If I really want to quickly revise that, on the one scale we have the interest, as in the interest being high or low, and then the power being high or low of your stakeholder. If the interest is low and power is also low, you should monitor or live with them on the ongoing basis. You should not be investing as an organization onto them as much as that you would need to do onto the others. But if the interest of a stakeholder is very high in you, but power in terms of really changing anything for you, or really troubling you, or really bothering you is not that high, then you should ensure that you're keeping them informed in whatsoever manner possible. But if the interest is also very high and interest is not that high in terms of they having interest in you, but the power is very high, then you should always keep them satisfied. And on the other side, if interest is also very high and power is also very high, you should manage them very closely. While I'm telling you this more from the standpoint of a model, but many times in the exam they will not give you a model onto this. What they will give you is that they will effectively tell you that these are your stakeholders. Now, this is again part of responsible leadership also, that you should be understanding your stakeholders at large, and then ensuring that all of their interests are being taken care, including the environment, including the the social cause issues that you're being observing as a leader of an organization. Now, if you know that who all are your direct and indirect stakeholders, you can really take the right step in the right direction for them to ensure that they're not being missed out come what may. And that is what the expectation is. Menlo framework really tells you that you should be having a differential approach basis your stakeholders, direct or indirect, considering who can do what, both from the interest and power standpoint. Let's say government who has a very high power, and of course may or may not be having that much of an interest in you, you always have to keep them satisfied or have to manage them very closely, as the case may be. Imperative, my friend, that we are not missing on these important pointers. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Coming on to the integrated reporting. Now, you should not be forgetting, my friend, that all of this that we're talking on responsible leadership side of it, or from the side of ensuring that anything and everything that we do is duly taken care from the standpoint of that we are not harming the environment and so on and so forth. The organizations are now supposed to do integrated reporting, in terms of they're not only reporting the profit of an organization, but they are doing more detailed reporting, covering the 6 important capitals that they really deal with. One is the financial capital, which they always report in terms of how well they have done in terms of the resources that have been provided to them. They should also be talking on the manufactured capital, which is man-made material good or fixed asset, which contribute to the production process rather than being the output itself. Examples are building, equipment, and infrastructure. They should also be talking on, kind of manufactured capital that they're deployed and the kind of things that they're doing in relation to it. Intellectual capital is something which is very unique to any and every organization. The organization should now also report on things that they're doing for the intellectual capital. The key element of any organization is to ensure or have the future earning potential with a close link between investment in R&D, innovation, human resource, and the external relationship, as these can determine the organizational competitive advantage. And that is the reason organizations now have to report on the intellectual capital also. Human capital consists of knowledge, skills, and experiences, and companies, employees, and managers as they're relevant for doing and, of course, improving and having the operational excellence on the ongoing basis. You also have to report on your human capital now. And then social and relationship capital, again, very important, my friend. The more we're getting into the human side of it, social and relationships are going to be playing a key role. Having a good relationship within the organization and a kind of relationships that you would have with your internal and external stakeholders is something that you now have to report on. God knows how do these guys would report onto this. I'm again, while I've seen various reportings happening onto it, the measurement factors or the control factors or the way they would be doing all of this is something, which will be evolving and, of course, improving over a period of time. Of course, some best practices will get into, but you should certainly know that this is the heading, this is the direction wherein we are getting now, wherein we're talking on in terms of not only the financial capital, but also the other capital pieces. The natural capital is again one wherein, you have to comment on the stock of natural resources or environmental asset that, which provide a flow of useful goods or services now, and how are you impacting from the futuristic standpoint, and how would that be in the future per se. Now, some of the key benefits, my friend, that you have for the integrated reporting, I think it certainly helps in enhanced system and accountability, strong decision making, better reputation, but more harmonization that you have, because in addition to the financial reporting, you're also doing the integrated reporting, which effectively makes the stakeholder feel that I can take a more sound decision now, and of course it helps in having a better relationship, and of course the communication to the board, to the people at large in the entirety. Many times he may throw something at you on the integrated reporting, but if you are lucky and you get to see something, my friend, you may have to think about these 6 social capital or 6 capitals that we just mentioned, and the benefit of integrated reporting come what may. I do want to highlight, my friend, one of the important aspect that I have seen in the exam, especially in the board or the director area, wherein I've seen that, many times there is an issue that is there in the board, and you would get to see that when you read the background and for some of the exhibits or some of the comments that you would see in the exam, that there is a situation wherein, there are issues with the board, and whether, the board is not having the right NEDs or the overall structure of the board is not right. You should always think this way, the way it is being managed. Think of that, what is the hiring process of the board, what all have been the legacy issues in the board, any kind of meeting issues that you have observed, do you have a quorum or not, do you have people participating in the in the meeting or not, do you have decision related issues or not in the board, wherein some of the decisions are only taken by 1 or 2 people. Do we have a domination there? Think about that. Always look for non-executive directors in terms of what do they say, and do you have a right NED mix? Do you have right NEDs? Do they have right background? Check for the information flow to the board, that right, there should be right information and communication channel. Think about that, the composition of committees for heading this is right, and it is not biased. Think about the responsibilities of committee and how they're managing it. If you see gap in this, then you should be able to highlight that and mention that. I'm only giving you some key pointers, my friend, in terms of what I have observed over past so many years in terms of the questions that I've seen, that these are the areas, if you would have at the back of your mind, answering the question would have been hell lot easy for you. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Moving on, my friend, I am stepping on to one of the technical articles now. You are going to cover another technical article today with me, which is on the cyber security. Now, do not forget, my friend, that we are living in an age wherein most of our work or most of our issues are being managed by the systems, by the technology. And that is one of the reasons, my friend, the cybersecurity or the issues in relation to cybersecurity is reaching to the peak now. And you being the strategic business leader of an organization, the need of the hour is that you're not forgetting on the issues that may be observed in case you are into the business. The technical article on the cybersecurity really explains you, my friend, as to how crucial it is for you being the strategic business leader to demonstrate that you have the understanding of it. Do not forget, my friend, the awareness of cybersecurity risks have increased, no doubt, but still there is a lot that you really need to do to ensure that people really understand that as to why cybersecurity needs a special attention. Do not forget that there is a huge value in the data, because data has increased to a tremendous amount in last many years, considering that now the data is not only the organizational data but also the personal data, which has huge vulnerability, and hence any loss that happens on the data point can lead to a huge loss for a company and may ultimately lead on to a scenario wherein company has to close down their business. Do not forget that storing and sharing the data on the cloud technologies or the cloud can also be a big time concern, and that is one of the reasons you have to be aware of what the cybersecurity risk is all about. You have to be aware in terms of what kind of software bugs you may have to ensure that cybersecurity risks are being taken care. Now, how can you promote the cybersecurity? Now you may get to see a situation, my friend, in the exam wherein you are being exposed to some kind of a cybersecurity risk. If that is the case, then you should be having this at the back of your mind as to what you should be doing in that kind of a scenario to ensure that you're able to plug the gap and tell the examiner that you really understand that. You should know that you have a management that is very serious about the cybersecurity as a concern. You should have the right level of network security. You should always have good amount of communication happening within your organization to ensure that there is an awareness, there is an education being flown down. You should always have a malware protection or prevention, because it will help you. It's more like having a system in place to ensure that they're fully updated and there is a software that is available to ensure that no one is getting on or getting into your system. You should certainly, you should certainly be more vigilant, more exceptional in terms of using the removable media devices to ensure that none of the virus or none of the security concerns really gets onto your system. You should always have a secure configuration. Again, this is more technical, but secure configuration really helps you that none of the people in the market can get onto or get into your system. You should be having user privileges, which is more like user-based restrictions onto your systems. You should always have incident being reported. So incident responses, any cybersecurity attacks, if it is possible, you should be able to control it. And of course, there should be a regular monitoring. It is all the more important that the systems are being duly taken care from the controlling standpoint on the ongoing basis, and there is a regular monitoring happening onto it. And considering we have seen a scenario wherein during the COVID times, most of us were at home and working from home. We have seen a scenario wherein if we have to work from home, there is a big dilution of the controls that happened at that point in time. So effective controls in the field includes use of virtual private networks, so-called VPNs. So if somebody is logging through only and only VPNs, then it is more secured. So that can again be one of the aspects that you may want to mention to ensure that people understands that. There are certain things that ACCA recommends an action for a CFO to be taken. And if you get to see something like this in the exam, my friend, you should know that these are the actions that you may have to recommend to a leader, to a leadership, to ensure that they are able to take care, redefine the risk and the resilience. It's more like, we know that the criminals or the cyber attackers, criminals are really smart, and they would be like a step ahead in terms of what they can do. So they recommend that there should be a zero trust model where all the users and the systems are systematically verified, and they ensure that there is a reasonable amount of protection and nothing is being missed on. They should also focus on some of the recovery plans. They should certainly have the plan B. They should also have the audit, my friend, of the supply chain system at large. And the detailed audit would certainly happen, and on an ongoing basis would be very helpful. And they should always invest on cyber insurance. Now, cyber insurance is a new term, my friend, that is really getting on, but there are many insurance agencies which are insuring now the cyber attacks. So if there is something like that really comes your way, you being the CFO of an organization, you have to take that cyber insurance. I can tell you, in the companies I've worked for, I have myself taken the cyber insurance, for one of the corporates, because we were very much prone to those issues, and we have to take it, considering that there was a huge customer database that we were dealing with, and we have to protect that, come what may. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Another technical article, my friend, I have for you is one of the recent one that really talks on the environmental and sustainability issues. I can tell you the half of this, or to an extent, we've already covered when we have done the responsible leadership, because responsible leadership also somewhere is part of it, wherein what it is really mentioning is that you should be thinking very systematically and ethically on the issues in relation to the environment and sustainability. And you being the strategic business leader of an organization should have a huge command over anything and everything that you do in the organization, to have the complete command over the things that can go wrong. Now, the risk that you have is you may have business risks, considering that, many of your strategy become obsolete in case you're not really concentrating on it. You may have a regulatory risk, my friend. If you're not thinking about sustainability, if you're not thinking about the organization at large, environmental at large, there is a huge risk, my friend, from the standpoint of regulation, because ISO, 14,000 is really causing issues now, and you should be aware of it, that you have to ensure that you're really protecting the environment in the best possible way. There are various examples, my friend, we have covered in the sessions, wherein we have really talked upon as to how important it is to have a command over the environment, and how damaging it can be if you're not really concentrating on that. Then you have the reputational risk if you really not think about it. You also have the operational risk, do not forget that. And of course, you have the financial risk, my friend, if you are doing something which is not something acceptable to the regulator or to the people at large. You're certainly exposing yourself to the financial risk, and of course to the organizational risk, in case the organization has to get closed down because of this. It is a huge concern. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Now, do not forget, my friend, that the importance of these risks or the importance of these areas are so much that you effectively get into a situation that if you're not concentrating on the environmental areas or on the sustainability areas, now is a time wherein many of the organizations have to either pay huge amount of penalties. And we've discussed with at length in our classes that British Petroleum or the other organizations who have not done well in terms of protecting their things, or protecting their I would say deliveries, they are landing up in a situation wherein they're paying huge amount of money to people, to the organization, to the regulators, and so on and so forth. Hence, it is all the more imperative, my friend, that people are understanding that what is really needed is that there is a important element, that is environment and sustainability, that is to be considered in anything and everything that they do. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Some of the tips, my friend, that I have more from the component standpoint, as to if you get to see a question in the exam that really circles down to the fact that you are seeing an environmental issue or you're seeing a sustainability issue, then what should you be doing in that kind of scenario? Do not forget, my friend, that one should be reading the question requirement first in this kind of a scenario as to what the question really says. You should spend on time in terms of understanding what kind of sustainability issue that may have. For example, if it is a petroleum industry, and you have the oil rigs flowing, under the sea, you have a sustainability issue from the standpoint that if that oil is getting leaked, it will be not only be, impacting the entire fishes and the underwater, animals or reptiles, or, the living creatures, it'll certainly be, a huge risk to them, but it is also a huge risk to the people who will be using that water, and of course all the human beings who are somewhere getting impacted by that directly or indirectly. So it is important, my friend, that all of those direct or the indirect stakeholders are being seen from the sustainability issue standpoint. Because if something like this happens, it certainly creates a big kind of a question mark onto myself for being existent as a business. Mention the issue, and of course, what is the way out. If you get to see a situation wherein you can cite out that this is the way out, do mention that. It is important. And just go beyond the financial profits. As I said, financial profit should not be the end. You should certainly go beyond that and structure it, my friend. Structure it in a way that you can think of it somewhat conclusion or a recommendation. Be very, very responsible and sustainable, because examiner really likes it. I would now say, what I've seen over a period of time is that in case you can mention something on sustainability and environment, any which ways in the exam, to really cite out, even if it is not a part of question, but you're able to demonstrate to the examiner. And of course, you have to find out the right place to really write it. But if you're able to write that this is imperative and this is important, guys, that organization at large should be thinking about environment or thinking about sustainability, examiner which will anyway like it. So even if a general comment like that can be very important, because nowadays examiner really gets very serious whenever anything in relation to environment or sustainability gets into the picture. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Moving on, guys, I have another technical article, which is blockchain. And I'm just quickly trying to give you a perspective around all of this, just to make sure that if you get to see something in the exam, you have a complete hang of it and you're not missing out on that. There is a blockchain technical article that is being given, which is more to do with the fact that, there are some latest issues that are there in the corporate world. And, some of the data systems or the systems are hacked or not visible during, causing the reputational issues. And of course, blockchain is now a recommended solution for them. So you may get to see a situation in the exam, my friend, wherein there is something like this happening and there is an argument, of blockchain that is being discussed or that is being proposed. So knowing what the blockchain is, knowing what the benefits are, knowing, what kind of recommendation that it would be, if it would be having for you, can be a big time thing. Do not forget there are some key features, of blockchain technology, and that is that, in blockchain, I would say that blockchain is more of a concept that you really need to unveil, in terms of getting onto the details. But one thing that I can tell you from the blockchain standpoint is that in a blockchain, none of the one person in the system can really change anything and everything. Because there is a dependency on various people, various system hurdles are there to ensure that data sanity is being protected. And that is one of the reasons that the entire database will never go for a toss, because every data is a different block and they are being arranged in a way that one block cannot be changed without the other, and so on and so forth. There is a single source ledger that is available in a blockchain. There is a consensus that is needed for a transaction to be valid, and all the participants really agree onto that. Many of the property documents, I can tell you, are moving onto the blockchain technology now, in addition to the insurance documents. The origin, which is more of, all the participants know what, where any asset or transaction has got originated from. There is an integrity element of it. There cannot be any participant, who can meddle with the transaction or play around with the transaction without having the right consensus being available. And that is one of the reasons, why blockchain has become very incredible in terms of security. And that is, as I said, since you always have many people deciding and having consensus on, and you cannot do things on your own way. It is really making it, very much secured. And this is one of the reasons, you may want to mention in the exam that one of the big time reason why blockchain is to be implemented is that they are very much secured from the standpoint of protecting the database as such. Before a block of information can be added to a blockchain, it must have to own unique digital fingerprint, and that is called hash, together with the hash to of a previous block. So I'm not getting technical over here, and neither you have to, because it is more in the technical terms that you really have to maybe you have to understand more technically. But from the examination standpoint, that technicality is not important. What is important is that blockchain give you the philosophy, give you the methodology, wherein one block cannot be changed without having consensus at large, and that is what it makes you hugely secured. And that is one of the reasons many of the organizations have started using blockchain in case there is a vulnerability to have a risk of something going wrong. Now, what is really important is that if there is something that really comes up to you in the exam that talks on that, the tips that you really needed to have if you have to deal with the blockchain as a question, always read the requirement. Is good. It goes without saying. See that what the issue is in the information system or the database system. Whether it is getting hacked or in the having a potential of getting hacked or infiltrated. Think about that, and think about, whether customer is complaining that there is a record that has been changed or now it is not visible and so on and so forth. If that is the case, and I can tell let's say you have a question of airline industry, or let's say you have a question of, construction industry. Let's say you have a question of a regulator. Let's say you have a question of cloud computing. Let's say you have a question of FMCG company, and you get to see a scenario wherein anything and everything that is happening is online, and there is a scenario wherein customer is complaining that some of the records are not visible, not right, and so on and so forth. So effectively you're saying that database is really vulnerable and is exposed to various kind of cybersecurity risks and so on and so forth. One of the aspect can be blockchain. So think about blockchain as a methodology, as a recommendatory action over there. When you get to see that, see if blockchain implementation can help in and support there. And do not forget the cost component of it, or the component that do you have people who can really understand that. Do point out those concerns also while you're recommending, because examiner really loves that you're being more holistic in terms of even your own recommendation, and that is what examiner would expect from a strategic business leader to do always. When you do that, do not forget that you have to do that with the logical reasoning, and you're not missing on the important aspect of it. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Should we move on? Yes, sir. Moving on to the technology, project related and disruption related areas. Do not forget, my friend, we have done almost two important areas by now, and we are switching the gears now to the technology, project and disruption related areas, just to make sure that we know how we should be dealing with these areas when it comes to hitting the exam in relation to this. We'll start off with the project, my friend. Understanding the project is one of the prominent thing that you would see in the exam at times. He would also give you, do you have the basic understanding of the project management or not? He would also try to understand that, do you know how to prepare a project initiation document? If you see the past exams, various past exams has a question on the project initiation document, so you may get to see one too. It is important, imperative that we know what PID is all about. All right, moving on. What is the project basic requirement? Any project, my friend, that you would get into, any project for that matter, any project has to have all of these elements over there, which is like you have to have a start date. All right, sir, we get that. The duration. All right, sir. Milestone. Okay. Finish date. Get that, sir. The relationship with the other projects or the dependencies that they have. Get that, sir. Cost budgeted. What kind of cost you have budgeted for that particular project? Project leader, who is responsible? Who is responsible for what? Project members. And you should also have a well-defined outcome, just to make sure that you have all of this to ensure that you're able to kickstart a project, and of course bringing that and converting that to the reality. Moving on, there are project initiation document, I would say project charter, that you really need to know, and I do have a mnemonic to be given to you. It's just coming on the next slide, which really talks on, which is nothing but the Go Sax Carom. I'm sure you have done that. Many of the Fintrammers would already know that. Important pieces that we're not missing on to that. And that's what this slide really says. If you get to see a question of the project, again, this is a quick revision, guys. If you get to see a question on the project, do not forget that you have to understand what is the project start date, project end date. You have to understand what kind of constraints you have, both from the resource side and the time side of it. Do not forget that. Look out for the showstoppers. Any kind of showstoppers are there. Any kind of things that are really impacting not only the project, but also the deliverables of the project, also the cost of the project, and so on and so forth. Think about that from the standpoint of organization at large, and think out as to what you should be doing in that kind of scenario. Ascertain risks, any kind of risks that are there. Think about that, and then communicate any and every risk that are there in the project. If project is getting delayed for whatsoever reason, you should be able to highlight that. If project has a concern, you should be able to highlight that. If project is really taking into consideration the kind of delays and of course that is somehow gonna be impacting you badly from the reputational standpoint, you should be able to highlight that and so on and so forth. Remember, whenever you're doing the PID, the project initiation document, you have to go for Go Sax Caram. You have to go for Go Sax Caram. You have to go for Go Sax Caram. Sir, what is this mnemonic, sir? I want many of the times I've seen that examiner has asked you to prepare a project initiation document. Now, in order to prepare a project initiation document, you should know that you are going to have Go Sax Caram to be included in that project, wherein G stands for goal. You have to know that what is the goal of an organization. You should know the objective. You should know the scope of the project. You should know the assumptions that you have taken in that project. You should know the business case of that project. You should know the stakeholders, direct or indirect, of that project. You should know the constraints that are there in that project. You should know the approvals and the sign-offs that are there in the project. You should know the reporting that would happen in this project. You should know the risks that are there in the project. You should also know the monitoring that has to happen for this project and who is responsible for that. Go Sax Caram is the mantra to really hit the PID in the right way, because if you would know this, it may be possible that some of the items are not available to you in the exam, but that's fine. But if you at least know this, that this is all that is to be included in the PID, it'll be very helpful for you, to my friend, to ensure that you're giving examiner exactly what he needs. We are proud Fintrammers, sir. We are not gonna be forgetting that. I'm loving you, my friend, for that. And that is what you really need to know. That is what you really need to have at the back of your mind. You should not be missing onto this, because this is really, really, really important from the examination standpoint. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Should we go ahead? Yes, sir. All right. Moving on, my friend, we have disruptive technologies coming in. We cannot survive in any and every organization, or I would say in the current scenario, till the time we are able to strive and thrive with the turbulence that is happening on account of disruptive technologies. And that is what we are going to deal with. That is what we are dealing with on the day-to-day basis. Very imperative and important, my friend, that you're not missing on to things like e-businesses, evolution, benefits, barriers, e-marketing, 6 I's, and so on and so forth. We all know this. If I really have to quickly revise this, there are various e-businesses: B2B, B2C, C2B, and C2C. Some of the examples we have already cited out over here. You really have to know that and do not miss on to it, because there are various e-businesses, junctions or functions that you really have to deal with, and some of them are being categorized over here. If I really have to tell you the e-business evolution, most of us would understand that any e-business can be only and only evaluated, if we have a right web presence. That is the basic premise for having a good business. You should certainly have a right internet or internet for yourself. You should be having any kind of a buying and selling happening. It's more like any kind of e-commerce thing that is happening. And you should certainly have somewhere the management, the processes, the overall business applications to really manage the transactions and having the right monitoring being done. And last but not the least is that your management needs to be somewhere ensuring that they're transforming the business at large, and they're transforming the current businesses and embedding the e-businesses into it, just to make sure that they get the full benefit out. What is really important, that any e-businesses, if you really get into, and e-business is not going to be a rocket science in the exam, my friend, but because they may throw you under the bus, by giving you various e-businesses example, various e-businesses issues. So, or, they may want to check on that you understand the benefits of, of having an e-business, or benefit of having, or barriers, for the e-business, and so on and so forth. So this is something that you really needed to have at the back of your mind. Ensure that you do not forget that. And that is that, if you do a right e-business things for yourself, it'll help in you improving the marketing things for yourself, having the right market penetration for yourself. It'll also help in terms of, reducing the cost, because, since you'll be more e-business now, or doing e-business now, the various costs, the overheads would reduce. You may have increased revenue because you have reached, you would have better outreach. You would have better information and controls, considering you have better systems in place, increased visibility, not only like within your own region or country, maybe abroad, and of course, enhanced customer service, considering that you'll be able to fulfill the need sitting out right here. Once you do that, you have to also think about, what kind of issues that we can get exposed to, because there are various issues and e-businesses are exposed to. One of the issue is that, there is a huge running cost to manage an e-business. Technophobia is again one of the important aspects, and this is something that you should mention in the exam if they really throws a concern at you that how you would manage a new technology or a new e-business, because many of the folks are still not techno savvy. They're still learning the technology piece of it, and hence technophobia thing. I used to be a technophobia guy, for a long time, and then I finally realized that if I would be like this, then I would not be able to do much. So I have to shift the gears and get onto the technology side of it. Security concerns, again, cyber security is no news for you. Setup cost is huge for e-businesses, limited opportunity to exploit e-businesses, limited IT resource, in-house, because you have to have good IT resources for yourself. Customers not likely to be interested in e-business at times if they are also technophobic. They also want to do, for some of the things, at least they would also want to have face-to-face interaction. E-thing is not always helpful for everyone. So these are like small barriers to e-businesses. I just wanted to quickly revise for you, just to make sure that, you get a hang of it if you get to see something like this in your exam. Now, how to handle these questions, my friend? You should always understand when you get to see a situation in the exam wherein a technology is being spoken. We have taken a lot of examples in our sessions, including some of the names like Yahoo, the Googles, in terms of what really happened wrong with Yahoo. We have got into the details, we have understood that. But if you get to see a situation wherein you're thinking about a disruption happening, technological change happening, you should understand that. You should assess the impact on the organization being given to you. If it is let's say, just taking an example, if it is an organization that deals with, let's say, the construction, then you should think that, if this is a change that is happening in the technology, how is that impacting the construction industry? If it is a car manufacturing unit, how is that impacting car manufacturing? If it is an airline industry, how the disruption is happening or impacting that airline industry, and so on and so forth. You should think about that. Look out for the challenges that they may pose onto their present and future perspective, their existence. Think about, the benefit that one may have if they would implement something like that, and then suggest with the positives and the negatives. Whenever you're suggesting something or some course of action, always do that with some positives and the negatives, to ensure that you're giving more holistic view as such, and not forgetting on that. Always give the financial constraint. I would say, you should just take this as a piece of advice. Whenever you are implementing anything, any new technology, any new I would say disruption related technology that you're implementing, always talk on financial constraint, because most of the organization would be struggling with finance any which ways. Or even if they're not struggling, you have to mention that in a way that examiner should feel that you're not just recommending thing for the heck sake of recommending. You are recommending thing with the logical reasoning, and of course taking into due consideration the cost component of it. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Financial consideration is really important. Do not miss on that, because more you will miss on it, worst it is from the I would say organizational standpoint. Is that clear? Yes, sir. All right, moving on, guys. We have some other areas left which I want to cover now and wrap this up, because this is something, as I said, is gonna be a stretch run, and I'm sure by now you also want some time to go and relax. So we'll really try to wrap this up. Okay. So we'll start off with some of the few other important areas, my friend, that I wanted to cover. And one of the things that I really want to talk on there was professional skills. We have known by now that in this exam, approximately 20 marks are gonna be there for you if you are doing well in terms of how to write these exams. And how to write this exam is dependent on how you are demonstrating these professional skills. And that is what I really want to give you my 2 cents on, that before you really sit for it, before you really go and of course write this, you should certainly be knowing that this is what you really need to do when it comes to this particular skill. So one of the professional skills that you really need to demonstrate and of course apply in the exam is the communication skill. So whenever you get and do not forget that, and I'm sure, many of the Fintrammers would know it because we have practiced a lot in the revision boot camp when it comes to, seeing a question, because professional skill always to be read in reference to, because in the exam, he would always give you apply commercial acumen with respect to, or for, or apply professional skepticism on. So that he'll give you something to be done in relation to that professional skill, and that is something you should not be forgetting. That is something you should certainly be having at the back of your mind, and you're not missing on to it. When it comes to the communication skills, what is really important for you to be managing over there is that you should certainly know what kind of format is to be used in the exam. You should certainly know that, whether it is a press release, whether it is an email, whether it is a letter, whether it is a memo, all of those formats are very well given to you. You should certainly revise that before you really sit for exam. Do not forget that, following that format is going to be the key. But while you do that, what is really important is that you should understand your audience. Remember the RAFT-P rule. The RAFT-P rule is the super important rule that, understanding your role, understanding your audience, understanding the relevant professional skills, understanding the exact task, and so on and so forth. So once you know that, this is what you really need to do in the exam, the best you are placed to handle that. When it comes to the professional skill in reference to, you should know who your audience is. You should understand what they already know. You should understand what they now need, and then start, answering. Be intelligent there. Understand the format that they have asked. Do not forget that importance of format is a super important thing. Be smart there. Be very logical and have the right flow. I always say that, write the most important things first. Very important that you prioritize on what you write. Most important things first, then the next, and then the least. Do not forget that. You have to follow the approach. Be concise and very objective, and answer the exact need of the question. Many times they have 2 or 3 requirements. Answer all. Do not miss on one. Very important, guys, that you not miss on it. Coming on to professional skepticism as a professional skill. When you get a question that you have to apply a professional skepticism with reference to something, do not forget that you have to consume the information and have the questioning mindset onto yourself. You should know all the exhibit, you have read the question. Now you should have the questioning mindset that, if it is being said, why it is being said, and is it being enough? Relate to the other information in the other exhibit. Probing is always good to verify. Think about that, are you able to correlate? Does the leadership, is right or doing right in terms of, what they're doing, or there is something that is being missed? Or if they're doing right, do you have the corroborative evidence within the exhibits that, says that, everything is fine? If not, challenge their views. But when you challenge them, challenge very smartly, very professionally. Question, my friend, to obtain the evidence. Many of the times when we say challenge the views means professional skepticism, we become rude over there. Do not do that. Challenging doesn't mean that, you're openly challenging that, what you're doing is absolutely wrong. You should not be doing this. I challenge you in this. Nope. I may want to say differently, saying that, this is what, what is being done. This is what it is. I think I may need some more information on this to really, somehow comment on it, or really give you my suggestion on it, and so on and so forth. So asking more evidence, asking more information is in a way challenging, but be very smart and very crisp over there. Do not get curt. Do not get carried away that something that is happening is absolutely not right. That is not the way. That is not the right way of doing it. All right. Moving on, we have the analysis skill, my friend. Analysis skill is again very important skill you would always see in the exam, which effectively means that you have to analyze anything and everything that is given to you, including the pre-seen material, including the exhibits, including the background information, including the requirement of the questions. You have analyzed each and everything. You should be able to correlate one exhibit to the other, requirement to the exhibit, and so on and so forth, and take information from all. You should not be only referring one exhibit. Many of the times, let's say in one of the question requirement, he's asking you to do one thing, and you can straight away relate that to one of the exhibit, but they have given you that apply the analysis skill. That may mean that you have to take information from various other exhibits for the purpose of answering that, because that is what analysis skill is all about. Analyze to understand, and of course, suggest basis the overall understanding and analysis of the case. Do not just mention basis one exhibit. Do not forget that. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Coming on to commercial acumen. Now, whenever you would see a commercial acumen in the question, that effectively wants you one to have a holistic understanding of the case, which any which ways you would need to have. But commercial acumen effectively says that whatsoever you are applying, let's say you are going to apply commercial acumen with reference to buying a product. So effectively, you should always have at the back of your mind that whatsoever I'm doing from the commercial acumen standpoint, is that practically possible for me? Is that commercially viable for me? When I say commercially viable, it's more like cost benefit analysis. When it says practically possible, you have to think about that whatever I'm suggesting, whatever is being discussed, is it practically possible for that company in that scenario? So you have to think of those aspects, those two aspects in anything and everything that you do. Commercially viable, practically possible is something that drives the commercial acumen as a concept. You have to see through that in reference to what is being mentioned over there in the exam, that do commercial acumen in reference to this. Think about that, whatever is being mentioned, is it commercially viable? Is it practically possible? Think of how, think of that considering the holistic case. Find out any kind of issues or concern that it has, assess any kind of possible options that you really can suggest, and then tell or suggest the best feasible option as per your own understanding. Commercial viable, practically possible is something you should always look forward to. Coming on to the evaluation, guys, evaluation is another professional skill that you really need to demonstrate. The key of the evaluation skill is that you should always understand the impact of what is being discussed. So whenever you're applying an evaluation skill onto a particular scenario, always think of that there is a positive and the negative aspect of it. You should be able to see both the implications, the direct as well as indirect, the positive as well as negative, and think about the outcome of what is being discussed. When you're thinking of output, always think about the pluses and the minuses. And then when you have the upside and downside, you should be able to mention that and then create a balanced argument and then suggest your final option or your final suggestion. Evaluation skill effectively warrant you that you have understood the case, you have understood the concerns. Whenever an evaluation skill is given with reference to something, you are effectively I'm sorry. Whenever you are going to do an evaluation or apply an evaluation skill with reference to something, effectively what is warranted over there is that are you able to understand the whole case as such? Do you know what is being said has the pluses and the minuses? Do you know that it has a direct and the indirect implications? And are you able to address the plus and minuses, direct and indirect implications? Are you able to understand that and then suggest the right way of action? Is that something that you can do? Can you do a balanced argument? If yes, you have that evaluation skill and it is there with you. We have practiced a lot, my friend, on these professional skills while handling the questions in the question marathon, in the revision bootcamp. If you are having any confusion onto it, I would humbly request to go back and check out those videos. I'm sure those will be very helpful in terms of really forming an approach and reinforcing what I just spoke, what we really want to do in the exam. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Now, one thing that I really want to spend on, is that I just want to give you my 2 cents on how you should be spending your time in the exam. Again, this is something that you should certainly be having with you, when you would go and sit. The total exam time is now 195 minutes, or the 3 hour 15 minutes time. The ideal reading time, you have to restrict it to 30 minutes. The reason they have given you the pre-seen material is that, you have done the basic background check any which ways of the case. And you would see that, when we'll meet tomorrow and we'll review the pre-seen material for the upcoming exam, you would see that that will effectively help you in terms of getting the full idea of what the case is all about or what the issue is all about. And you just have to now see through as to what exam really gives you from the background standpoint and from the exhibit standpoint, and then start answering the questions. So effectively, a lot of your reading time has already gone into pre-seen material. 30 minutes is something that you should be restricting yourself to. The balanced, let's say 165 minutes, is for 80 marks. I consider myself that we should at least give 15-20 minutes to the revision. So effectively 145 minutes that I have for writing. So effectively 2 minutes per mark is something I should be spending on in terms of writing in the exam, which effectively means, my friend, if there's a question of, like, say 15 marks, you should not give more than 30 minutes onto that question. That is the way you should be able to restrict yourself in terms of doing justice to each and every question in the exam. I have seen, my friend, that people who have really attempted all the questions have higher probability of clearing it, rather than if you leave 1 or 2 questions blank, then you're effectively calling the examiner to ding you there, and of course you would not be able to pass if you would leave or 1 or 2 questions just blank like that. So important is that do justice to all of the questions, spend 2 minutes, approximately 2 minutes per mark on each and every question, and that is what you should do, and that is what you should really work towards and ensure that you're able to justify and catch up to from the examination standpoint. I would say, if I really have to give you my tip in terms of ensuring that, how can you read the SBL question rightfully in the exam, and there's something we have demonstrated a lot, while doing the past exam questions or exam standard questions in our revision bootcamp and marathon. What if I really have to summarize that, what you should be doing? I would say read and review the pre-seen material properly first. Don't try to memorize things. Don't try to over Google it. That's not important. That's not relevant. But you should at least know what the pre-seen material really says. You should know what it really wants you to understand from the industry background standpoint, company's background standpoint. You should know that. I think we'll do that tomorrow together. Do not panic by seeing the number of pages in the content of the exam. Many times, we get panicky with that. Do not do that. Just understand who's in the whom's of the introduction. Very important. Who is who, is very important for us to really, there at times there are many names being given in the question, and we get confused by that. Try to consume that. I would say prepare the case requirement, or a summary. We have done that in the marathon. Even if you're not preparing that, having that draft P in your mind is important. The role, the audience, the format, the task, the professional skill needed. I think if you can have this draft P done for each and every question, and you're able to demonstrate that in the exam, that you're following the draft P by giving the answer in the requisite format, I don't think anybody can stop you clearing this exam. Following the draft P is going to be the mantra. We have practiced a lot, my friend, in the revision bootcamp. I would humbly request, in case you can revise a couple of questions there from I think that will be really great, because having a draft P in your mind, and of course writing that, considering those things into your mind, is going to be a game changer in this exam. I keep saying that like a broken record. This exam is not tough, my friend. Exam is very easy. The only thing is there is a way to write the exam. The content is very commonsensical, but the way to write an exam is something that you really need to excel on. The more you'll practice on, the better it is. For the fit drammers, yeah, I'm almost done with your mock exams. You would be receiving my comments very soon, and soon we'll be having calls in terms of discussing as to what is happening on that side of the table. Avoid back and forth within the exhibits. Relate questions to the exhibit. I think one of the comments we started off the session with is that we should read the exhibit having question in our mind. Once you'll have it, going back and forth, from the exhibit to the question really goes for a toss. We don't have to do that, and it will be in a better shape. Restrict the reading time maximum to 30 minutes. I think I've said that again and again and again. Do not forget that. Now, some of the last words, my friend, I have, is there's something that you really should be carrying yourself, with yourself in the exam room. That is, be ready for surprise. SBL exam is full of surprises. He will give you something in the exam which will surprise you. Whether it is a format, whether it is a content, whether it is a positioning, whether it is a case, he'll give you something in the exam which is a surprise. But whosoever can deal with that surprise in those 3 hours, 15 minutes of time, he'll be making the game change for himself or herself for that matter. You should be ready for the surprise, and you should be ready to kill it and come over with it. You should not really be overthinking on that, and that is what you should be thinking and doing. And that is what I really want you to live with. Do not think that everything will be hunky dory in the exam. Be ready for surprise. Be ready to deal with it in the best possible way. Attempt to the best using your own common sense. Many of the questions in the exam may not have any model to be applied on, but they just need your common sense and, of course, the approach that we just mentioned, which is the RAFT-P approach. Follow that. I think that's going to be a game changer. Attempt the exam in full. Do justice to all questions. I think I can't say more on this. Very important. Try to give the exact requirement that he has asked for. At times, the requirements are more than one, two, or three. Answer everything. Do not miss on. Do not just address the first requirement and miss on the other ones. Very important that we know that there are 2-3 requirements in this question. I'll answer all of that, and I'm not missing on to it. And last but not the least is pray to God, and if possible, touch the feet of your parents. I don't think that there is there can be better blessings than what is coming from them. And I can tell you that it really helps. It has always helped me, and I'm sure it'll help you too. Trust me, it will certainly help you. With that, I would say that all the very best, and do not forget my cup of coffee, my friend. Once you clear this exam, I'm really looking forward to my cup of coffee, and I'm very blessed that as on date I have coffee of being outstanding, to all the places in the world, almost all the places in the world, and that's the value addition. I think I'm proud of in terms of what we have done to the fraternity at large, and we'll keep doing that. All that we need is that you're following the approach that is being mentioned, and I'm sure coffee will be mine very soon. That's what I really wanted to cover, my friend. I'm sure most of you would be joining me tomorrow for the pre-seen material discussion. It will be 4 p.m. India time. I would invite all of you to really come and, of course, discuss that. For the folks who are seeing us for the first time, I just want to highlight the offerings that FinTram has. As far as the the overall SBL offering is concerned, we have a full course being available for the strategic business leader exam that gives you a holistic view of all the syllabus areas of the strategic business leader, with the various practical real life examples that we have had together, with various experiences that I've had with various corporates. We can really talk on that. We've spoken on that in terms of what you really need to have as a takeaway. And along with that, you would also get a revision boot camp that essentially takes care of all of the formats, professional skills, writing skills, reading skills, and practice of the questions, including concept, comprehensive, past exam, and exam standard questions, giving you all the tips and tricks that you really need not to kill this exam in the best possible way. So that is one that is available for the folks who have already given the exam but were not able to clear it for whatsoever reason. You have a fast track course of strategic business leader also available, which we have done it in a capsule way, so you can effectively revise the entire content in just like 13 to 14 sessions. And you would also get the revision bootcamp to practice and, of course, excel onto it. This is very helpful for the folks who have not been able to clear SBL for like a couple of attempts. This can really help you come up the curve. So if you have failed in SBL for whatsoever reason, fast track course is for you to really club the gaps and get over with it. In case you have done your self-study and you have done the entire content and you only need the course and practice sessions, the revision bootcamp, strategic business leader revision bootcamp can be again be a choice. You can again take that, and that will be again very helpful to you, because you would get to know how can you answer the questions rightfully. And last but not the least is strategic business leader memory chart book. We have pictorically created a chart book for SBL exam that effectively gives you a pictorial depiction of what concepts are being discussed. Those are like good to stay in your mind, and of course very good for the end time revision. You can of course take the memory chart book. That is any which way is being offered as part of our full course and fast track course. So you can always opt for that if you want that separately. With that, guys, we have reached onto the stage where if there is any question, I can take it up. You can just put that onto the chat box. I'll be happy to pick that up. If there is anything I can help you out, I'll be more than happy to do that before I really wrap up.
Sir, I have a question here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, let's say for example, if a question asks in terms of implementation of the US GAAP or IFRS. So let's say like we would be explaining the positives and the negatives of each of the standards, and like in terms of the conclusion, can we leave giving a balanced conclusion rather than arriving at some specific how to approach these sort of scenarios in the
Period one, of
question?
course, you would never see exam giving you a scenario wherein you have to comment on any IFRS, at least in SBL exam, right?
Okay, okay.
But you may get to see some kind of a scenario which might deal with an issue which you have to assess from the standpoint of good or bad, right or wrong. In that case, always give positives and negatives, but do not think that you have to give your conclusion in a balancing way. No. If you think that there is a way that you think is right, which is a way out named A, call out, call it out. Now that might be different from Dhanushri, where Dhanushri might see that choice C is a good one, which is okay, right? Dhanushri will give point with regard to choice C. You would give points with regards to point A. Both of you are right. You're not wrong. The only thing is how justified you are in choosing point A and how justified she is in choosing point C. So there is no, and that is the beauty of the strategic business leader exam, that there is no right and wrong out here. Everything is right and everything is okay till the time you are able to justify it. For example, let's say down the line you get a question which is implementing digital strategy for the organization, right? Now in digital strategy, they're asking you to acquire a company which is having some positives and some negatives. I'm just hypothetically making it, right? Now let's say Dhanushri feels that that company is not good because of culture. You think that company is good because of future foresight that you have for that company. Despite that culture is not good, you still feel that you should go ahead and buy that company. But Dhanushri feels no, culture is really important, and we'll not look on to profitability, we'll look on to culture. So both the answers are right. Now it is on the examiner to see that how convincing you are in terms of justifying your approach towards that uh, question or towards that dilemma that you are in. You know what I mean by now, Priya, right? Don't
Yes, sir. Thank you,
think
sir.
that giving balancing answer will give you more marks. My point are right. In fact, I would say that never give a balancing answer. Give an answer which is right to yourself in that scenario. If it is balancing
Sure.
one, let's say if it is balancing one, you feel both the things are okay, then write both the things are okay, which is okay. But you need to be convinced what you're writing is right, because you are strategic business leader there. You're not there to please the examiner. And don't think that examiner will be pleased by writing midway. No, he may not be.
Got it.
Any other question? Anyone? Guys, sustainability, I think, is gonna be important from the examination perspective. We touched upon project management today. Again, that can also be relevant if there is something in relation to that, a project that may really come your way, wherein the PID, which is project initiation document, is one of the favorite examiner area, wherein we keep testing and so on and so forth. So you never know, right, what really comes your way, but be prepared, guys. The topics that I picked up, the pointers that I picked up are the ones that are gonna be relevant for this I would say, uh, business. Blockchain, for that matter, can be very good for publishing business if they are, trying to protect their copyrights and so on and so forth. I don't know what will come in your exam, but I've tried picking out topics that are important and relevant. Dhanushri, you were saying something.
Sir, you were discussing about that pestle and Porter 5 force, Porter diamond, right? So when it comes to pestle, it is more of understanding the external environment of a company, right?
Yes, you're right.
So what about this Porter's diamond? Like, is it a geography or like internal
Geography.
or
No, not internal, external, not internal.
so Porter's diamond is also external.
See, okay.
Like,
Porter's diamond you use when you are getting into a particular geography. Then you use Porter's diamond. Porter's five forces you use when you get into a different industry or you're trying to get into a different industry. The pestle is assessing your own environment, not the environment of a country or a industry. Pestle is for assessing your own environment.
what do you mean by own environment, sir?
Dhanushri, you are having a company which is existing in India for having XYZ numbers of years in existence. What is the external environment of that company in India? That is pestle. When this company wants to acquire somebody in US, you would apply Porter's diamond in US in relation to the acquisition that you're making.
Okay.
When you're acquiring, entering into a particular scheme of affairs or different streams of business, then you would apply Porter's five forces out there.
Okay.
Sir, so I have a question in continuity to that pestle.
Yes.
In terms only with respect to the technology aspect, let's say like in the information you've been given that the government is like, let's say they are aiding or funding one of the business element of the company which we are in, and the industry as such, it is like technologically enabled. They are good. They are, I mean, in terms of the implementation, let's say the facts scenario covers that. Now, in terms of answering the question, do we have to cover like what the the benefit which the company can get from the aiding, or how exactly? Because I feel like too much of thought or time is spent on writing that part. Could you please
But why not? Why not you would write? If you would not write that, then what will you write, Priya? You would have to write that, right? That the country's environment is this would be beneficial to us in this way. Hence, this actually gives you a perfect segue to get to the decision that what you should be doing in a scenario you are in. But that will be a good starting point.
sure.
You should
So somewhere
you should always try to find out a right starting point, which is always being, getting into the basics. Basic is that, yes, I have a good company, good resources, government really supports us. I have a potential acquisition that can be complementary to my business. We'll go ahead with that. So we have to follow an all-round approach.
okay.
Abini, you were saying something? No. Niharika Puttar, you were saying something? निहारिका नाराज हो मेरे से? कोई सवाल ही नहीं पूछ रही हो तुम मेरे से? Kashish, Mohit,
All good.
anything that comes to your mind? कशिश तो मुझे
Sir,
लग रहा है
we
ऑडिट कमेटी
get
से थक गया
the
कशिश.
PPT, right? Slides.
Yes, you will get it, Dhanushri. We're finalizing the content of it. You will get it. Don't worry. Once we're done with tomorrow's session, you will get it all. Don't worry. मोहित यार पूछ ला कुछ यार. मोहित नाराज है मेरे तो. नाराज है मोहित मेरे से?
No, sir.
All right, all clear, my friend.
Yes.
अभी हमें कभी मेहनत बंद नहीं करनी है. हमें कल भी आना है. कल भी बहुत मेहनत करनी है हमें. कल भी हमें बिल्कुल डटना है प्री सीन मटेरियल पे. कल का सेशन जो जून वाले हैं वो अगर मिस भी करना चाहें तो कोई बात नहीं है, नो प्रॉब्लम. बट ये 2 सेशन पहले मिस नहीं करने थे. बट हैविंग सेड दैट, बोलो धनुश्री क्या कह रही हो तुम?
Sir, so that recorded video and the slides, everything will get if we miss.
मैं धनुश्री ईमेल डाल देता हूं तुम्हें, दैट यू विल गेट इट ऑल. डाल दूं ईमेल? कितनी बार बोलूं मैं? सब कुछ मिलेगा बाबा. घबराना क्यों है? जब मैं बोल रहा हूं मिलेगा, पावर पॉइंट में मिलेगा, वीडियो भी मिलेगा, तो भाई थोड़ा सब्र करो. सब मिलेगा. फाइनलाइज होने में थोड़ा सा टाइम लगता है बेटा। कभी कोई वीडियो का ऑडियो, अभी मैं ये देख रहा था इस वीडियो के ऑडियो में प्रॉब्लम आ रहा है, कुछ प्रॉब्लम आया है हमें while we were talking, मेरी टीम का मुझे मैसेज आया that there is problem in the audio, so you know that will get corrected, वीडियो फाइनलाइज होगा और आप तक पहुंचेगा। क्यों नहीं आएगा? आप ही के लिए तो बना है बेटा, तो क्यों नहीं आएगा? कल भी जो हमारा प्री सीड मटेरियल का डिस्कशन है वो इसी चीजों के रिवॉल्व होना है जो हम अभी तक डिस्कस कर चुके हैं। प्री सीड मटेरियल कल पढ़ के आने की क्लास में जरूरत नहीं है। कल की क्लास के बाद निहारिका जी प्री सीड मटेरियल नहीं पढ़ा तो विशाखापट्टनम आके पिटाई होगी। बात समझ में आती है? मोहित, इज दैट क्लियर? निहारिका, ऋषिका, Anushree, Abhini, is that clear?
Yes, sir. Sir, have you already taken the mock or will it be in some
It'll
few
come your
days?
way, it'll come your way, don't worry. Let the session get over tomorrow, it'll come your way.
Okay.
It'll come your way, don't worry. All right, if there is nothing guys, let's wrap this up. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, and we will take it up from there. All the best and look forward tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.